Edina Park and Recreation Commission. Jan, would you do a roll call?
Yep. Commissioner McCauley?
Here.
Commissioner Strother?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner Darlene?
Here.
Commissioner Burke?
Here.
Commissioner Eitz?
Here.
Commissioner Willett?
Here.
Okay. First item we have up is approval of our meeting agenda for tonight. May I have a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any changes, inputs on the agenda? Everyone okay with it? If so, all in favor? Aye? Say aye. Opposed? Passed. Second up, approval of our meeting minutes, and this would be, we skipped our meeting in June, so we have our meeting minutes from Tuesday, May 8th, 2018. Could I have a motion to approve our minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any comments or inputs on the minutes? Janet, I do have two small points. On Section B, which was the Parks and Recreations Department vision statement, almost the last line there, it says their vision as gleaming more towards, and I believe that was to be leaning more towards talking about excellence. And then the other that I would just offer up that we tweak a bit, under our goose management plan, we were stating that having the advisory commission review and, quote, rubber stamp it for the police department. That term may indeed have been used, but I'd suggest we might want to put approve.
Okay.
And just say that was our intent, is to be, because we did have some discussion about it, and review and approve it. Otherwise, I didn't have any other comments or changes. So,
Okay, got those two. Thanks.
if there are no others, been moved and seconded, so all in favor of approving our minutes from Tuesday, May 8th? Aye. Any opposed? Passed. Okay. First up on our agenda, we will pause for a second to do an introduction. And Ann, I'll hand it over to you for the honors.
Thank you very much, Greg. I have the great pleasure this evening to introduce our new Arts Center General Manager. Susan Tarnowski is here to give a brief introduction of herself to the Commission. Susan has been with us for just over a month now. It's been a whirlwind so far, but we're thrilled to have her on our team. Thank you, Susan.
And thank you, Commissioners and Mr. Chair, for having me come in. I am in week 5. I'm not counting it in minutes anymore. It's kind of amazing. My background is as an educator, as a musician, and as sort of a self-taught artist. Although I told Anne I wasn't going to tell this story, there was a time in my teaching career when I lived in Australia that I did teach cricket. So I think that qualifies me for lots of jobs in Park and Recs. I'm a Minnesota person. I grew up in Duluth, went to UMD, came to the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities for master's and doctoral degrees. I spent probably the first half of my career doing public school teaching and then doing collegiate teaching in the last 20 years as a chief academic officer, vice president for academic affairs in a variety of colleges and universities. So at this point in my life, I was looking for ways to, first of all, do a little give back. I've had a wonderful life and a wonderful calling in education, but also to come back to my own roots in the arts. And I spent a little bit of time with some executive coaches, thinking about how those skills translate. And when the opening at the Edina Arts Center came up, I thought, this is a place I've been. This is a place that I have participated. I've been a member. I would love to look at this. And I can't, somebody just asked me, I'm in the middle of a different meeting, and somebody just said, well, how do you like it? And I said, I think I've been preparing for this my whole life. So I'm just as pleased as can be to be there. We have some wonderful young staff, and none of us have a lot of institutional knowledge, so we're making things up. But I think in about 6 months that will settle down. And I think we've made some great progress. We have a show going up on Thursday that is a lovely ceramic show. We have 2 shows, and one of them is for makers over 80 years old. So if you can think about people at age 80 pulling clay on the wheel or manipulating clay and lifting these things, it's a pretty incredible thing. So stop over and see our show. We'll be doing shows for the rest of this year. We have our kids camps going on now. So if you were to have walked in the other day, you would have seen French fries and hot dogs and hamburgers in clay and pretty darn happy kids. So I think that the Art Center has offered an incredible service to the community and will continue to do so, and we'll think about ways that we can expand. I'll end by saying that the partnership with the other agencies within Park and Recs is very exciting. And I know you're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about the golf enterprise today. That's something I'm looking forward to learning more about. I think some of our active senior programs fit beautifully with what we're doing. So I am looking forward to a very good set of collaborations and new programming as we go forward. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, Susan. Thank you for the
Any
introduction.
questions for me?
Any questions of Susan?
All right. Thank you again. Have a lovely
I do have
evening.
one comment for you. We have had people talk about space for cricket, and we've seen some cricket players in the area, so you may be called on before you know it.
Yeah, well, my last instruction is always, okay, let's play. So we might need a little bit more of an expert if we do that. Thanks again. Have
Thank
a good
you.
meeting.
Welcome.
Thanks, Ann.
Okay, next up, community comment. I'm guessing no this evening. Just a guess. We'll move on. Golf Enterprise update. Joe Aboud here this evening to give us an update on how things are going over at Braemar and the golf course reconstruction.
Yep.
Exciting to see all the green
It's
and
getting
developing.
there. Alrighty. Good evening. Joe Aboud here, General Manager for the golf operation over at Braemar. Just here to give you a hopefully quick wrap up and update of what's going on at the golf facilities over the past 16 months or so. We are coming to the final stages of the process. We are hoping that our contractor is going to be gone in a matter of weeks. So everything is, it extended out quite a bit, a little bit more than we wanted it to, but I think the product that we're going to get at the end is going to be very good, so we're very excited about that. And just want to go through a few things because it's been a while since I've been in front of you and let you know some of the things that are going on. We just hired a new superintendent. His name is Jeff Mold. He came from Edina Country Club. He was there for about 14 years as their senior assistant. I think he's going to be a tremendous asset to the facility. We can already see his work ethic over the past month that he's been here, so we're very excited about that. He is constantly out there. He's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. just trying to learn the golf course, and I think he's very excited about the opportunity, and I think it's going to be he will be a person that's going to be here for a long time, and I think it's a good fit. He's done some grow in at Edina Country Club, so he has that experience under his belt, and he's also probably one of the most, not energetic, but his personality is very calm, but he is very enthusiastic about what he's doing out there. So it's very good, and we're very excited about that. The process we went through to get him was a national search. We ended up getting 51 applicants from all over the country. We took that down to 10, we took it down to 5, and then we took it down to 2. We had 2 extremely good and quality applicants, and Jeff just prevailed in the end. So I think we're very excited about him, and if you get a chance, come out to the golf course. I can introduce you, and he might be able to give you a tour around the golf course and let you know his perspective on what's going on out there. So at any time, just give me a call, and we'll set that up for you. Just quickly over the numbers, the golf course total budget all in was just over $7 million. We are still on pace to be under that $7 million total. So I think that's going well. We did extend out the project over 2018 when we thought we were going to be open in the end of 2018. But we did budget for a loss in 2018, and we're probably going to hit that same loss that we budgeted for being open a couple months and being closed the entire year. So it's not going to cost us really any more money than we thought, but it is costing us time. The only thing about it is I think the overall product will be a lot better opening in 2019 as it would be if we'd opened in 2018. So it's good and bad. People are chomping at the bit to try and get out there. I think come August or September, it's going to be in extremely good shape and it'll look like it's ready to play. We're going to have to kind of find different ways to keep them off the golf course. We have talked to the police department and just have them do some extra rounds around the golf course just to make sure we protect our asset going into the winter. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in young kids wanting to sneak out there and want to play the golf course. So, so what you're looking at right now, I think you have it up on your screens, is you have the rendering of hole number 13. That is on your right. And the actual picture of what it was a few weeks ago is on your left. So it is definitely coming to fruition, and I think it's turning out extremely well. You're looking at the back half of the property. That's part of the property that was seeded first. So that's looking a lot better than some of the other areas that were just seeded this year. But as you can see, it's doing very well.
Is that the only hole you have pretty much the same?
What's that?
Is that the only hole that's pretty much the same as the original?
There's really nothing that's the same out there. This hole,
It's still the elevated tee?
it's still the elevated tee, but we expanded the tee boxes. We went farther up the hill. So while that old hole used to be, it was number 12 before, it would play about a little over 100 yards. Rick, I think, would...
100?
Or, I think one of your commissioners has a couple hole-in-ones on that hole, so he probably knows the yardages. But now it can play up to 204 yards. And it's a completely different look from up top there as we've opened up the entire top of the hill. Before, everything was kind of overhang, very small tee boxes, and it was just surrounded, and it was very difficult to grow grass up there. Everybody knows come July, August, we were out of grass up there just because it was just so contained. Now it's opened up, bigger tee boxes. We will have grass throughout the year up there. So it's going to be a fabulous hole. So we're excited about that. It's going to be a signature hole. It looks great right now, and it's going to look even better going forward. What we're seeing right here is the bunker. It's greenside on number 13. All the bunkers are complete. There is some work that needs to be done to reshape them a little bit to Richard Mandel's specs. I think in their rush to get things done, you know, some of the angle or some of the edges of the bunkers got a little straight or didn't have a curve to it, and so all that's left to be done is going back and reshaping those bunkers, which should be one of the very last things that they do before they leave the property, the contractors. What we did is we put in the Better Billy bunker system. It is the same system that was put in place at Hazeltine. It's going to be a really good system for us. It will definitely take labor costs for the future down substantially. And if you look at it, this bunker pretty much wasn't touched the entire winter and is still in extremely good shape. So you don't have the runoff. It's a system that has pea gravel that's coated with a polymer, and then an angular sand goes over top of it. So it actually holds the sand up on the bunker face, which that's the big labor issue going out after a rainstorm. All the sand would go down to the bottom of the bunker. Not going to see that with this system. So it's going to save us a lot of money and labor going forward. Greens. All greens have been seeded, including last week we seeded the new practice putting green. And within 5 days, we saw germination. So that's really exciting for that. It's going to be even bigger. As everybody knows, it was an extremely busy practice green. We saw a lot of traffic, especially there in this springtime when the high schools were out there. You would see 75 people on that green. Now it's going to be even bigger. It's still going to be crowded, but it'll have more space for everybody to practice out there. So I think that's going to be good. The greens you're looking at right now are the greens on number 5. You can see the rendering is the one to the right, and the actual is the picture to the left. So it's turning out very well, and I think we're very pleased with the growing so far. Another exciting part of the project is the multi-use area. It's turning out, I think, even better than we had planned. It's right on the side of the clubhouse. It's going to be there for lawn sports, bocce ball, lawn bowling, bags. We will be doing corporate weddings out there, or corporate events out there. We're going to try and do a lot of weddings out there. I think it'll be a good addition for the new food and beverage vendor. And it's just going to be a really good community space, not just for golfers. And I think it's something that we can be excited about. There will be a fire pit out there. We did move the memorial garden. That was by the gazebo. That's going to be off to the side of the multi-use area. So it's a good space. It's a good community space, and I think it's going to see a lot of traffic because it's good and bad. 2 hours after it was laid, there was about 30 kids out there playing on it who were at a graduation party in the clubhouse. So people are excited about that, and everybody who comes out there looks at it and says, "Hey, what is that? And what are you guys going to do with it?" And it's exciting to tell people about it.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
I'm just curious on the two things, the dimensions, and then I think you answered my question by saying that there's a bunch of kids out there, but it's just free for all. It's not rented space. True?
It is going to be rented by the lane.
Okay.
And it's mostly going to be, the rental is going to be the cost of the equipment that is used to play. So if somebody wants a lane, we got to rent the bags and the boards or the lawn bowling set. So it's just basically to cover the cost of that. So.
But if people are not bowling and the free for all, like you mentioned before, is that okay, or is that?
We're going to try and program it out. We are going to have nights that are going to be open out there, but for the most part, we'll try and program it. So Monday might be a bags league. Tuesday might be a lawn bowling. Wednesday might be a bocce ball league. Thursday and Friday might be, open type lane night. And then, we want to keep it open for the weekends because we do want to put weddings out there on the weekends. So we probably won't schedule it out on evenings of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll leave that open, and hopefully we'll get some rentals out there.
Perfect. And then the timing on that particular part, is that also for next
This is
spring?
going to be ready to go probably in the first part of August.
Perfect.
And we're going to start. We're going to start out slow. We have one bags league that is scheduled for that time for this year. We're going to do some, open houses with the community and the golfers and some of the leagues that we have out there just to get them acclimated as well. So starting out slow, and then we'll start our heavy programming next year.
Okay. And my other question was the dimensions in terms of how many lanes there are there.
100 by 100s, so we're going to do 6 lanes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is it turf, Joe?
It's artificial turf. Yeah, it's putting height too, so actually we could use it as a putting green as well.
Is it kind of the same as in the dome, where it's got the?
No, it doesn't have as much pile as that. It's actually its name is a putting green surface, so it's a lot shorter than that. So it's the one in the dome has a nap to it a little bit more than I would say, and it's not necessarily meant for running on or anything like that. But this one's a little bit shorter.
Can I weigh in on that just a little bit more with a little bit more specificity? The dome or Pamela Park has almost a 4-inch fiber with rubber infill, and this is more like between 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch with no infill. So it's a very different surface.
And what about directly underneath that? Is it
It's-
concrete,
No, it's a packed sand.
like sand? So I was just thinking about bocce. You know, if you're lawn bowling, you roll. Bocce, you can toss.
It,
And
it
if
should be able
was
to
a
handle that.
cement, it would bounce and.
No, it's not cement.
Okay.
It's that, but it's packed. It's been compacted quite a bit.
Mhm.
So if I could, Joe, follow up on Corin's question and comment, understanding your goal or intent is to have it scheduled, will there be the availability if folks are just there for dinner, they could look out and say, hey, there are a couple open lanes, we want to go out and do something right away, that's going to be easy to do and
Yes.
accessible and
Yes.
inviting?
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks.
I'm so sorry. I'm
fine.
I'm overthinking all this, but I just know the questions that are in here. So in terms of the communication, 'cause I know I always ask this, but the communication in terms of that, because this will be available, as you said, more likely to be sooner than the rest of, is there a communication plan in terms of that, and then how people are supposed to schedule? Is it like a tea time scheduling process?
It's going to be similar to a tea time scheduling process. Amy Smith, who is one of our staffers, is going to be in charge of scheduling that area. We are going to plan to launch this not as a big grand opening of it, but more of a soft opening just to get started with it. We haven't done this type of the lawn bowling leagues in the past, so that's something that we're not necessarily experienced with. So we're going to try and do it a little bit slower just to get open and get our feet under it. We've gone to Brookview. We've gone to what's the restaurant that has it?
Pinstripes?
Brits. So had some people go over there too, just to see how other people are doing it. But it's just we don't have a lot of experience in running this type of program.
Yeah, just curious. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So here is what you're going to see. We actually did a time lapse of the two practice putting. Whoops, lost it. Going back. Is there a back one on Debbie? Or? So what you see here are the two practice greens that we added. The one on the right is a chipping green. The one on the left is a bunker green. We decided to sod these as opposed to seeding them. Since their future use is going to be for chipping, they don't have to be the same putting consistency as the rest of the golf course. But we will be opening up these probably in the first week in August as well. So they've turned out extremely well. Very happy with the surfaces. And they are expanded greens. They're going to do very well for us. So customers are going to get a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the improved conditions in the practice area this year.
You said right was chipping, left was bunker?
Right was chipping, left is bunker. Yep.
What happened to the old Ranger shed?
It's going away.
You could buy it. Raise revenue.
So Project Betterment. This term came up just because Mid-America has, to date, they've done pretty quality work, but it's been extremely slow. They were the low bid on the project by over $1 million. And I think we saw that in the amount of labor that they put towards the project. Doesn't mean that they didn't do quality work, but I think they got a little bit behind. And I think they realized it. They didn't really come out and say it, but I think they realized it because we didn't want to go after liquidated damages with the contractor because it's very difficult to really get anything out of a contractor in liquidated damages. So we went after project betterments. So these project betterments are all different things that they offer to us at no additional cost in lieu of going after liquidated damages. So they installed that bent grass sod on those 2 greens that you just saw at no additional cost to us because they were supposed to be seeded. So they brought in sod and actually sodded those greens, and that's about a $20,000 value to the city that we didn't have to pay for. Green covers, we didn't end up needing those. The synthetic turf in the multi-use area, so that was originally planned to be bocce ball courts. We changed our direction after the start of the project and wanted to go towards more of a multi-use area. So they actually installed the synthetic turf at no additional cost to the contract. So that was about a $68,000 change order that we did not have to pay for. They're also doing all the concrete surfaces around the multi-use area, which was fairly substantial. So it's a nice space and it's well laid out. They're also offering some grow-in support to us while we are growing in the project, just because of the time that they were behind. So that was about another $20,000 value. And then we had a change order in the project already for hydromulching. We were hydromulching all the areas instead of the regular seeding. They offered to hydromulch the remainder of the project at no additional cost to us as well. So that's about a $25,000 value. We ended up getting about $200,000 in extra value for the city. Really didn't cost Mid-America $200,000, but the value that we got out of it was about $200,000. So, we would have loved to have been open this year, but once again, I think we're better off waiting until next year. So it worked out pretty well.
What is hydromulch?
Hydromulch is basically you're putting down, I don't know if you can explain it better than I can, Tom.
So it's a wood fiber material that gets mixed in with water, and it gets sprayed over the seeded surfaces, and it locks the soil down, holds moisture so it germinates quicker, and stops erosion.
Thank you. Excuse me. Just a reminder of some of the community benefits that we have in the project. We always hear about the trees coming down. One of the main answers for the trees coming down is that all the old corridors were defined by the trees that were there. It's a new golf course, so we have new corridors out there. So we ended up putting in close to 300 new trees. The trees that we took out defined the old corridor. A lot of them were junk trees, so I think we're ahead of the game of what we're getting. They're a mixture of pin oaks, bur oaks, and northern oaks. We've also created more wetland out there. So there's a lot of good aspects of the project that were not just golf related. It was a little bit better for the community. So I think we have a lot to be proud of with not just the golf, but the environmental enhancements that we made out there.
I think on this one, Joe, just before you leave it, the one that struck me is the tree cover, right? I mean, and maybe if someone did an overview of the actual canopy cover, it's not quite there yet, but the numbers here say over 70 years, the tree cover has gone from 14% up to 35%.
Yes.
For this, 445 acre site. So, and probably not too many places you can look at as development has come through that the tree cover has gone up by that degree, sure, like what we have here. So I think that's a really strong point.
Yes, absolutely. The financial outlook, it's doing extremely well. The operations that we have open and have improved over the years are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Total revenue as of June 1st, we were looking at $766,000. What we did is we went back to 2000. Oops. I'm sorry, I think I might have transposed a number. Oh, excuse me, this is another comparison. So 2018 is off to a great start this year. We are about $100,000 ahead of where we were in 2016 with just the operations that are open. The main reason that occurred is because of the Golf Dome. The Golf Dome had a tremendous year. We actually were probably the only thing that was open during April. So we saw every high school, we saw every customer in the whole region coming out to our facility. So it was a good start for us, and it may have been a slow start on the golf course side, but even the golf course revenues are not up to what they were in 2017, but they're very close to their 5-year average. So we are doing extremely well on the par 3. It's been very well received. Rounds there are up as opposed to where they were in 2014 with the executive course. So it's turned out very well. Merchandise, we did open up our new golf shop, and we've seen a large influx in business without even really being open yet. So that's going extremely well. And like I said, the Dome revenue started out the year like gangbusters. It did very well for us. So. What we did real quick with this slide is we did a comparison of where we were in 2014 with the executive course as opposed to what we did in 2017 with the par 3. So in 2017, we did $310,000 on the Academy 9 par 3 golf course in kind of the same store comparison, because that's what we did on that site for the facility was $195,000. So we went from 14,000 rounds on the old executive, and we boosted that up to about 23,000 rounds. So it's a good indicator that things are going well and went as planned with the closure of Fred Richards and bringing those golfers over to Braemar. Buckets were sold. We're about 8,000 more buckets sold in that same comparison, and about almost $100,000 more in revenue. So things are going extremely well with the portions of the project that have already been completed.
So Joe, you talked about the revenue from 2014, 2017. I'm just curious, was the Fred open in 2014?
That was the last year the Fred was open.
What would their numbers, if you added those in here, would there be?
It would be, I think they did about 12 or 13,000 rounds. So you put that in conjunction with the executive, you're at about 26,000. So we got most of the rounds transferred over to the Braemar property. And it's extremely busy. We wouldn't really want to put too many more rounds out there because it is a very popular golf course right now. We do have Red River Kitchen. They are on the City Council agenda for next week to get their liquor license. They want to open up shortly after that. So we're very excited to get them in there. They're starting to put their kitchen equipment in and point of sale systems in. They have hired their general manager for the property. He's an Edina resident. So I think he's going to be a good asset to the operation, and I think he's going to be invested, and I think he's going to do a good job for it. So that's going well. They're hoping to start, I think the 23rd was the last date that I've heard. They may push that back just based on getting everything in, but we're all excited about them. I don't know if anybody's been out to Republic or the Spring Cafe at Como Pavilion. They do a really good job at those places, and they've gotten a lot of good publicity at those places. So Matty O'Reilly is a very well-respected restaurateur in the area, so I think we're extremely lucky to have them out here, and I think they're gonna give us what we wanted from the facility. I think the way we contracted them here, we learned from some of the mistakes we made in the past, and I think they're going to be a better vendor for us going in the future. So we're very excited about that.
So Joe, I recall the initial plan with them is that before bricks and mortar, they were going to have a food truck there. Is that still the game plan, or are they going all
I think
bricks and mortar?
that they tied their financing. They were always going to purchase another food truck, and they tied their restaurant equipment financing to the purchase of their food truck. Well, that got delayed, and they had other obligations for their. They already have 2 food trucks, and they have other obligations for those. So their intent was to get that 3rd food truck and immediately bring one of the other ones over. It just didn't work out in the timing. So they're going to go straight to their regular operations as opposed to bringing the food truck out.
Okay.
And with that, that's all I had. If anybody has any other questions.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Questions? Rick?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to listen to this presentation a couple weeks ago to the city council work session, and it was received quite well there. So things are going well.
Good. Good to hear. Others? Great update, Joe. Thank
All
you.
right,
Sounds
thank you
like
very
things
much.
are going very well.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with how things are going at this point. It's going to be, the golf course is going to be tremendous. That's one of the things, please call me up or shoot me an email if you want to come out and take a look. I'd be happy to take you around and show you what's going on, because it's impressive. And I think everybody will be impressed with what's going on out there. And that's something that we can all be proud of. I think it's turning out very well.
Well, and Ann may have cued you in, but even better yet, we're thinking about next month we'll have our off-site there at the course. So
Well, I think, like I
we
said,
may show up.
we're going to do some Edina staff events just to kind of softly go into the multi-use area. If you get a chance to go down and use the Harry Cooper, we did renovate that as well, and that's turned out very well. So it's a good space for an off-site meeting.
What's the Harry Cooper?
The Harry Cooper Lounge was one of the lounges in the basement that over the wintertime, in-house, actually most of our maintenance crew, they actually refurbished the entire room. So now it is a true conference room that's going to go well for meeting spaces, as well as doing, using it as a bridal room or private dining or special events. So it's going to be really nice to use.
Well, we promise we will not jump on the course early.
That'll be good.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Bredesen Park Trails. Ann, got a presentation and some discussion for us?
Thank you very much, Greg. I want to introduce Tom Swenson. Tom is our Assistant Parks and Recreation Director in charge of park maintenance, and he's here to help make this presentation with me this evening, but especially answer any questions that you might have about Bredesen Park. So thank you for hearing some information about Bredesen Park this evening. Bredesen Park has been a very hot topic of conversation in our department for about the last 2 years, but especially in the last year since the 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail opened. So I want to give you an update as to some changes that have occurred in the park, some questions and concerns from residents, some things that we're doing to address some questions and concerns that we're hearing from residents, and possibly asking the commission if they would like to take action on any changes in the park moving forward. So with that, Bredesen Park is a 206-acre park. It has a bike trail that's about 2.1 acres. It has a walking trail, or excuse me, miles. It has a walking trail that's about 2 miles, and then there are some nature trails throughout the park as well. A project that has occurred throughout Edina that you may or may not be aware of is a stream bank stabilization project that was done and is currently being done by the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District. The reason that I'm mentioning this evening is there were some very significant and positive impacts within Bredesen Park as part of this project, so I thought it might be a good opportunity to call it to your attention if you weren't aware of it. It's a project that is occurring throughout the entire length of stream in Edina. There is approximately 5.7 miles of 9 Mile Creek that flows through Edina, and the stream bank stabilization project is going to impact about 3.5 of those miles. The intent of the project is to improve the stream health, stabilize the stream bank, improve habitat, and protection of property from erosion. That all might sound very familiar with what we're doing at Arden Park right now as well. I thought this was interesting. This is a photo that I got from their website, not a photo from Bredesen Park, but it shows an example of a stream bank restoration project. The photo above is a before photo, and a photo below is the after photo of the stream bank restoration. So it's occurring in two phases. Phase 1 happened last year, totals about 2.2 miles, and phase 2 will be happening on the east side of Edina, and that will be occurring later this year. Typically, stream bank projects occur during the winter months, so I would anticipate this will probably start up again in November or December of this year.
And
Here's
sorry,
oh,
Ann,
sure.
maybe you'll touch on this if you're still going, but I was just curious looking at that picture. Is this on city property or is it on private property or some of both?
It would be some of both. The 9 Mile Creek Watershed District, as Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, has the creek property, and so there might be some adjacent city property that would be impacted as well.
But is it then also going to residents and saying we're going to do this on your property that comes up to that creek?
You know, honestly, Greg, that's a great question, and I wasn't involved in this project at all.
Okay.
I would doubt if there is any impact actually to private property on
thanks.
these properties. But honestly, I'm not positive on that. This is an example of the stream bank restoration project that actually occurred within Bredesen Park. The photo on the left shows an area that was restored with a lot of native wildflowers. Actually, our park maintenance team planted a lot of that back into the area that was restored along the creek. And on the right-hand side, it was an area where the stream bank was stabilized. A whole lot of buckthorn was removed, and a lot of native trees were replanted. So it's been a very, very positive project throughout Edina with some very specific impacts at Bredesen Park.
And besides the nuisance that buckthorn is that the area that you just showed us, is that going to be accessible to the public, or is it going to grow over again with whatever was replanted and used for the stabilization?
You know, it's an area that's accessible, but there aren't any trails that are going to be going through there. If you look really closely, you can see that there's a stabilizing fabric in there, and it's been planted. So it will grow up to look similar to what you see in the photo on the left. So I was able to really easily walk through there to access that, but it's eventually going to grow up with native plantings.
Yeah, my question was, maybe you'll answer it later, is the old nature path that kind of ran through the middle of Bredesen, is any of that area part of this stream bank stuff, or?
Well, actually, somewhat, yes. The area that you see over on the photo on the left-hand side goes into the nature area. So some of the significant changes at Bredesen Park involve trails. As you know, the 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail came through Edina. The entire trail length of the 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail is about 15.3 miles. It's just over 7 miles in Edina. And of that 7 miles, about 1.7 miles of that is boardwalk, which is pretty unique throughout the Three Rivers system. They have boardwalks, but they don't have anything as significant as this in Edina. And that's part of what makes this trail really unique. Hopefully you've all been on it. It's just very beautiful, and it's such a unique experience to be on the boardwalk above the creek and in those nature areas where people typically would not have been able to access. There is a section in the Bredesen Park where a decision was made back in 2013-ish by staff, Parks and Rec Commission, and City Council to actually combine the Bredesen Walking Trail, the Bredesen Biking Trail, and the Three Rivers Park District Trail. That is approximately 0.25 miles, so just a quarter of a mile, through Bredesen Park. But it has been a combination that has had a fair amount of controversy. The decision was made to combine those trails for a variety of reasons, most of them environmental. If we were to have had these trails separated, the regional trail would have had to have been a lot closer to Highway 62. It would have required significant more tree removal and just overall brush and ground cover removal, which would have opened up views to Highway 62 even much more significantly than it is right now. Another reason that it was the decision was made to combine that trail was from a user perspective. The old trail would go underwater sometimes. As I'll show you a photo in a little while, the area is in a floodplain. So with heavy rains, that trail would go underwater. We were also concerned that if there were people walking on the trail, if it continued to be a separated trail, they would be standing down below and looking up at the boardwalk and saying, well, I wish I was on that trail, and then was going to have to walk around. So we thought for ease of use, for the environment, for a wide variety of reasons, it made some sense to combine that trail. Another significant change that was made because of that decision was a decision to make the one-way bike trail a two-way bike trail. And that was a decision that the Parks and Recreation Commission made at the same time the decision was made to combine those trails back in 2013 or 2014. And I would say the main reason that that decision was made is because one of the goals of the regional trail is to be a commuting trail. And one of the goals with the commuting trail was with the hopes that students would ride their bike on the trail over the bridge for Highway 62 to get to the high school and the middle school. And the thought was, we all know how kids are, they're going to take the shortest distance between 2 points. So if they were on the east side of the park, they probably weren't going to want to ride the 1.5 miles around the park to get to the bridge. They probably were going to take that 1/4 mile shortcut and ride the trail in the wrong direction. So that was one of the main reasons that the decision was made to make that a two-way trail. The regional trail is a 10-foot wide trail, and the bike trail in the park is an 8-foot wide trail. It is very common in any park system in the country to have a two-way bike trail that's 8 feet wide. So it's a very standard use. It's a very significant change to Bredesen Park, but it is a very standard use. Another thing worth noting is all Three Rivers Park District trails are shared trails, which means they're used by walkers, they're used by bikers, they're used by rollerbladers, they're used by Nordic skiers. Every single trail that they have is a shared trail. I think there's a little bit of a misconception by some residents who live adjacent to this trail that only in Edina is it a shared trail, but that's not true. Every Three Rivers Park District trail
I think
is a
part of the
shared
reason
trail.
that perception may exist is when you think about Calhoun or Harriet, although they are shared technically, there's 2 levels of them. And I think a lot of people think about Bredesen, they think about Harriet, and I think that's, from what I hear, I think that's part of it, because those are a one-way on the bike side of it, and they are shared because they both go around the lake, but they're different distances and they're separated enough by elevation that I think that people don't consider those to be a shared trail. They do merge back together as a shared trail, but then they separate again several places throughout the chain of lakes.
Yep.
So
And I would absolutely not call those shared trails. Those are single-use trails,
Okay, good.
but those are also not Three Rivers Park District regional trails. Those trails around the lakes are
Ground rounds.
operated by the Minneapolis Park Board.
Yeah.
So all of the regional trails are the 10-foot wide trails.
And I think that
the
might be
shared
part of
trails.
the education of what is, because the signage that's now over by Bredesen looks similar to the ones that's by the Grand Rounds. Like at the end of Harriet where it says like the directions to, do you know what I'm talking about, the ones with the little arrows?
Mm-hmm.
It's similar in terms of the look. So I don't think people are educated enough to know, like, this is Edina, this is Minneapolis, this is Three Rivers, this is Minnehaha. Like, I don't think people know that. So I think that's part of it is maybe it's just a step back in understanding how do we tell people what the differences are, not just, hey, you don't get it, they're not shared and they are what the difference is. I think it's understanding we have a lot of systems here and it's not just Edina and it's not just Minneapolis being different. I think that's the bigger picture is people don't know what's Minnehaha, what's,
Sure.
Three Rivers as well as Minneapolis and Edina.
Yep,
Just my
absolutely. No,
feedback.
I completely agree. And I think I'll probably touch on a few of those points as I get into the presentation as well. The signage on the right, the Share the Trail sign, is an actual trail sign that the Three Rivers Park District will be putting up on the trail in Edina. So some of the resident concerns, I think in the next 2 slides, I'll probably be talking about a lot of Corin's issues and concerns as well. But some of the different things that I've heard is the sight lines for the two-way traffic was a concern. Tom and his team took a very aggressive approach and went in and removed a lot of buckthorn around the trail to improve sight lines. And we also did some striping and striped a line down the center of the two-way bike trail. I'll show a picture of that a little bit later. There were some concerns about the trail width for two-way bike traffic. Again, as I mentioned, an 8-foot wide trail is a very standard two-way bike trail. But again, it's different. It's different than what has been at Bredesen in the past. We have had concerns about bike riding on walking trails. We've had concerns about runners and walkers on bike trails. I was out there today. Here's an example of a bike trail on the left. You can see the striping down the center. And the walking trail on the right, 8 feet apart, and there's a runner that's running down the bike trail. A little bit further down the road, there was a walker walking in the same situation on the biking trail. So the problems go both ways. We're seeing bikes on the walking trails, and we're seeing walkers and runners on the biking trails as well. We're having concerns from residents about bikers riding too fast, and some concerns of dogs being afraid of the bikes on the shared trails. So we have a lot of things that are planned to help educate our users of our trail system as to how they should appropriately and safely use the trails. One thing that's shown in this photo is a stencil. Tom and his team are going to be going out at all areas where there are entrances into the park or where there are trail crossings. Similar to what you see at the Chain of Lakes, we're going to be painting cement markings that show no bikes on this trail or no walkers on this trail to really give a visual. Sometimes, I've been in this business a long time, the answer isn't more signs because honestly the more signs you have, the more people ignore them. But I'm an avid trail user and I really feel that the most used and recognized signs are those signs that are actually painted on the concrete. So that's going to be something new for us that Tom and his team are going to be taking care of. Some more concerns that I hear regularly is that bikers don't alert walkers that they're coming. When I started biking here in the 80s, every single biker passing another biker or passing a walker said on your left. Now, the majority don't. It's just a common courtesy thing that really, I think, goes a long way towards courtesy on the trails and safety on the trails. I'm hearing a lot of complaints about walkers not staying on the edges or keeping dogs under control. On a shared trail, if you have a walker that's walking right down the center of the trail as opposed to staying over to a side or walking over the side and letting a dog, good opportunities for conflicts there. Concerns about bike speed on the regional trail. Concerns about winter maintenance. The Three Rivers Park District historically has not maintained any of their trails during the winter months. And honestly, all of the communities within the Three Rivers Park District system is interested in having those trails maintained as commuter trails during the winter months. So we're having those conversations with the Park District about at least funding the snow removal on those trails. I've also had concerns about slippery boardwalk surfaces. The boardwalks are constructed unbelievably strong. They're constructed to hold an ambulance. So you can drive a truck on those trails. So they're going to last, but the boards are very close together. And so sometimes water will stand on those boardwalks, and we've had concerned residents about slipperiness. So some of the things that we have considered and have actually implemented is considered replacing the bridge and the walking trail that we removed. I'll get into that in just a minute. I talked about signage. The Park District, this is another sign that the Park District is going to be putting up on the trail in Edina. And we also have increased the number of signs showing two-way bike trail and those types of things. I think education, as Corin mentioned, is really critical. And I think as a department, we will be working on that. And the Three Rivers Park District is as well. John Gunyu from the Three Rivers Park District recently put out a communication on shared trails, common courtesy, etiquette, and how you use those shared trails. So I think it's definitely a partnership between the city and the Three Rivers Park District to educate all users of the trails. And the other thing, honestly, is just common courtesy. I have heard many reports of people who have admitted to being stubborn and not wanting to share that trail and refusing to move over when either a biker has been coming or a walker has been coming. I've witnessed it myself on several occasions at Bredesen Park. So I think common courtesy is something that needs to come back a little bit. I realize people are frustrated. I realize that change is hard, but I would sure hate to have someone get hurt because of stubborn behavior. So the opportunity to replace the old trail to make a separate walking trail separate from the shared trail for that 0.25 mile segment is something that has been very heavily discussed over the last year. This picture is not the exact same bridge or location, but it's a little bit further down the trail. So I just wanted to show you what it looked like before we removed it. There was a separate asphalt path and a separate a separate bridge for the walking and for the biking. We seriously considered replacing the asphalt, and I'll show you a couple pictures, and replacing the bridge. When we got into it, Tom and I were even pricing bridges. We were getting some asphalt quotes. We reached out to the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District and found out that we could not replace the path or the bridge, even though it was just removed a year or 2 years ago, because it's in a floodplain. And because it's in a floodplain, I'm going to show you this picture next. The red shows the floodplain in the area. We cannot replace the trail as it was. It would have to be an elevated boardwalk. So if we were to do it, we would have to put an elevated boardwalk immediately adjacent to the elevated boardwalk. Extremely expensive and does not seem to make a lot of sense to do that. This is a picture of the existing condition. The photo on the left is the 10-foot wide shared boardwalk. The picture in the center shows where the walking trail used to be. So the trail was removed. If you look a little bit further down, you'll see some rock. That's the abutments for the bridge, and the photo on the right is the actual bridge abutments from the walking trail that was removed. So the abutments are still there. We thought it would be possibly easy to put the trail and the bridge back, but we are not allowed to do it because of Watershed District regulations. We learned this, I'm going to say about a month ago now. Ironically, we had a scheduled walk with the mayor within a week after that. We put out, with the help of Debbie from our communications department, we put out a very targeted message to residents in that area telling them that we weren't able to replace that trail and explain to them why. I also did the walk with the mayor that night. There were a lot of residents who had a lot of questions, and I think they understood. They're not necessarily happy with the answer, but I think they understand the regulations and why we're not able to replace that trail. As I mentioned, we've made some pretty significant changes to the trail. The photo on the left shows the two-way bike traffic signs that we have installed. I think we're going to be putting up a few more of those signs yet. The picture in the middle shows the striping that we have done on the two-way bike trail. On the left-hand side is piles of buckthorn. So that shows us just some of the buckthorn that Tom and his team removed. And then the photo on the right shows a problem area. That is an area where there is a curve on the biking trail, that it would be ideal to open up all of the buckthorn that you see in that area to improve the sightline. So those are the types of things that we're working on to respond to resident requests and concerns. And we've made some really significant progress in the past 2 months on this initiative. Any questions about those trails so far?
I have some questions.
Sure.
So in terms of the education, so I have spent quite a few times on those trails, and then you also mentioned that it's nice, especially for students going back and forth. In terms of the education, I'm not sure how much we're communicating with the schools, but I actually just happened to go on the 5th grade bike trip, and when I saw all those lines, but I mean the kids there's no one staying on one side of it, and I mean it was an interesting day. I was trying to help kids with spinning on with flip-flops, but there's kids all over, and I don't think that there's also that education. So I think we know there's a lot of kids spending time on this. I think it's also would be a good partnership maybe with some form of the schools of helping them understand, hey, by the way, that this is something they need to stay on one side. It's not like it's the HOV that goes one way when school's in and when school's out, because I don't think that they're even cognizant of it. And half these kids, the teenagers particularly, are they're texting and biking, or they have earphones in. It doesn't matter if you're saying on your right 100 times, they're not hearing it. So I think that there's a partnership that could really be of value, especially over by the high school and by the middle school there, that I think that, I mean, we just did that 5th grade bike just one day, but I mean, I think that's a big opportunity in terms of that. And then the other part of it, when it comes to safety, is, and I've talked to the police department several times, but we have to have a better partnership with the parks and the safety around the crosswalks that people don't stop at ever, and because then you're only safe when you're on the boardwalk, and then you think you're just as safe on the boardwalk, and then you get on the streets and you're not, and the people aren't stopping at the crosswalks. And I just think that it's a really scary to think about these kids at a free-for-all on a boardwalk and then going on the streets. And I mean, over by my house, there's kids who gotten hit multiple times. I've stood there and almost gotten hit. I just think that we need to have a better partnership, because we're going to expand these trails for safety, and we're almost going to open another bag of worms by creating people thinking that these are actually safer roads than they actually are. So
I think it takes a village. I absolutely agree. We can certainly do what we can do from a city and from a school district perspective. I think parents have a lot of onus in education, and I think trail users need to go on the trails, and they need to think. I'm a very avid cyclist myself. This past Sunday took a 32-mile ride through Minneapolis, Edina, Hopkins, and St. Paul. I almost got hit by cars 3 times, like close calls. I've been biking for years, and I'm a very defensive biker, but I almost got hit 3 times. I experienced walkers walking the wrong way on biking trails. I experienced dogs with leashes across biking trails, and I experienced bikers coming the wrong way on biking trails. So I'm honestly not sure exactly what the answer is. It's not just an Edina problem, but I think we need to do the best we can as an organization and as a city and as a school district to do our best to educate.
Just adding on to that, this isn't from the school district perspective, but I run and bike and have done every one of those trails regularly. None of this is new before that. I mean, people were on the wrong trails a year ago, 3 years ago. Dogs were out. I mean, I would really personally hesitate to make a switch, because I'll just tell you from the openings with the 10 building changes with us, we're changing people's routines to go 2 ways. And so if you rechange them again, you will have another set of people. That's just, coming in, because you are right. These are education issues in terms of bike trail courtesy and use. And I love that you're going to do stencils. I've seen those on the ones. They are amazing. I mean, the ones behind the high school, I'm truly enjoying them, but these do not, anything that you have mentioned, other than that small change with the 2-way. And honestly, my experience with people has been really positive on them. Just using your own signals. Sometimes it's not even yelling, it's like a hand signal. And just as another perspective, frankly, I'm there all the time. I had no idea you were experiencing this constant barrage. And I know a little bit about that, but I think you need time in on change with routines for folks before you look at really expensive options of rechanging, because I'm almost 100% sure they will, and I'm probably going to, but that you will hear another set of things about that. Regarding kids, we certainly do. We do bike safety classes all the time. There's a 4th grade curriculum about it. It is a partnership, though. I would not depend on school district staff or city staff to educate kids in our system. I think it has to happen. But.
I'm just saying, particularly you're leading the school,
Yeah. Oh, no, like I said, but there's a because we were all, have attended multiple trainings, but anyway.
And thank you, Val. I very much appreciate that input. And on an aside, I have ridden the trail through Edina on several occasions, and I have never experienced more polite people than on the trail in Edina. When I say on your left, people say thank you, and they move over. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in the rest of the community. So my experience has actually been really positive on riding the regional trail in Edina.
Sorry. I didn't have a question. I just had a comment. Those signs that the Three River District is putting up with the artist renderings of the runner and the bicyclist, I thought it was important to point out that the artist is a former Edina resident, Edina High School graduate, Adam Turman. So I don't know if he'll ever see this, but it's kind of a cool thing that those are his drawings. And if you ever want to check out some of his stuff, go to his website.
Yeah, that's totally cool. So the only thing I would mention is I was just joined the park board at the time that we approved this, and all of these questions and comments came out, and it was all about making sure we have the right signage. Do we make sure people understand where we need to go? So I think it's just the natural progression of what we expected would happen. And I like the new signs. I think those will be really helpful. But I think it is even not only at the entrances, anywhere we can remind people where they could cut over to it to put those decal kind of things on. It's just really helpful for people, because there's a lot of different ways to go through that park, and whatever we can do just to help. And I was wondering, do you think, I feel like people are pretty courteous, but is that something we should have, a sign, be courteous, and remind people? I don't know, it's just, I haven't noticed that either, but, what?
I've actually had that suggestion made several times. Whether people would pay attention to it or not, I don't know, but yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much for all of your feedback on that. I would like to switch gears a little bit to the nature trail portion of the park. Tom and I have spent a lot of time in this park in the past few months looking for ways to improve. And I also, as I mentioned, took a walk with the mayor and a dozen or so residents a couple weeks ago. And it was a resident on this walk that actually gave me a suggestion that really made me think, and had Tom and I really thinking and talking. And the suggestion was maybe we consider opening up the nature trail, even at least part of it, to walkers and dog walkers. So if walkers didn't want to, for whatever reason, walk on the shared trail. There is a really logical in and out currently of the nature trail where someone could cut off the walking trail, walk through the nature trail, and then hop back on the walking trail. I thought it's an interesting request, certainly worth exploring. Then Tom and I started talking about it as we were walking around the park and looking at the condition of the fence around that park, and started to think, why is that fence really here? We talked to people who had been involved in the initial installation of that fence, and what we hear is that fence was originally installed because the original intent was that that was going to be kind of a nature park, and that eventually they wanted to build a nature center and that it was going to be a nature preserve. It didn't happen. I don't see that that is going to happen anytime in the future. So Tom and I were talking and we thought, why do we continue to invest in this fence? Why do we continue to keep people with dogs out of this area? Maybe we should consider a different use for that nature trail. Currently, we have a lot of turnstiles at the entrance, and the turnstiles are intended to keep people with dogs from entering. As Tom and I were talking, the fence throughout the park is probably a 4-foot, 5-foot fence. That's not keeping any animals in or any animals out. And quite frankly, the turnstiles aren't keeping dogs out either. And what we have created was a bit of a de facto off-leash dog park, because it's fenced. If you can get your dog in there, you can let your dog run and you don't have to worry about your dog getting out. So here's a couple of photos showing entrances on a couple of different locations into the nature area. Here are a couple of photos of different trail surfaces in the nature area. The photo on the right is an area that we see significant runoff, so at some point they put asphalt in. Most of the trails in the nature trail are natural surface. The photo on the left is a little hard to see, but it's an example of where a tree branch has come down and completely crashed through the fence. There are many, many locations where the fence has been damaged and is completely laying on the ground. The photo on the right is actually the area where a resident recommended we could just cut in here with our dogs, walk a quarter of a mile and then pop back out. As you can see, there's a lot of signs. There's a sign saying you have to pick up your dog waste. There's a sign saying no dogs allowed in the nature area. There's actually 2 signs that say no smoking that are about 6 feet apart from one another. I'm not really quite sure why. But it just is seeming to me a little bit unnecessary at this point. Yeah, I think there was on this. There's actually a fence there, but yeah, there's actually a fence there, but I think it's a really convenient area to put your dog across.
I walk that park a lot, and I've never gone in there. 2 reasons. It just looks creepy, the turnstiles. And I've had a friend who took a friend in there, and they couldn't find their way out, and that story has stuck in my mind. But I've never seen anybody in there, so I think it's a good idea to look at a different use for it. Those turnstiles look like stay out to me.
Yeah. I think the nature area, we're obviously not monitoring use in that area, but I think the nature area does get a fair amount of use. But I think it would get even more use if it were a little bit more open and welcoming. So with that, I would like to ask the commission if you would be interested in looking at this as an issue and making a recommendation about changing the use. I don't want to lead you in any direction. Maybe we remove a restriction, maybe we make it temporary, maybe we make it just part of the trail. Or is there anything else that the commission would like to see based on use, based on what they've heard? Any other changes at Bredesen?
If you got rid of the turnstiles, what would be the argument for continuing to have a restriction on dogs?
I don't think there would be. I think if we remove the turnstile, it would be with the assumption that we would be allowing dogs in that area. And then we would be working with our communications department to educate people on appropriate use of dogs. Not that it's an off-leash area, that you would still have to have your dogs on leash, you would still have to pick up after your dogs and those sorts of things. But I think if we remove the turnstiles, it would be my recommendation anyway to allow dogs in that area.
Is there any, like, I don't know, like, requirement that a nature trail has a fence around it or something?
No, not unless there is a specific species that we're trying to protect. And there isn't anything that we know of in this area.
What if we just took down the fence and the turnstiles, don't make a big deal about it, but then put up signs that your dog needs to be on a leash? And just don't make a big deal about it. To your point, it's not required for anything. People could still consider it a deeper nature trail than what's in the park right now. And what we're doing is taking down a fence that's breaking down anyway, that we don't want to spend money replacing. We don't have the money to replace. People walk their dogs now on the trails on leashes.
And I agree with Eileen that I've always felt like it's been a barrier. Like when I was first going there, I was like, I wonder why they want to keep us out of there.
Special testing.
I got stuck in it one time.
Section 51.
But yeah, to me, it's almost like we're saying keep out of the park. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm all for opening it up and opening up the park. And I think if you don't have any paved trails in there, you're probably not gonna. Maybe you'll get some mountain bikers, but I don't think there's going to be people flying through the middle of that thing. And so I think it would enhance the use of the park.
And I was just looking, I took a picture and I apparently forgot to include it in my presentation, but the other thing that happens is the trees and the buckthorn are growing up through the fence, and it's creating a really thick, dense screen. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, buckthorn is bad enough, but then put the fence in there and you can't even see through it in a lot of areas.
So yeah, piggybacking on that is if we remove the fence and there's the areas that have trees that have fallen and stuff like that, would the assumption be that those things would be also cleaned up? There would be buckthorn removal, all within kind of the previous part of the presentation where we talk about sight lines and those types of things. Is that all part of this, or is this something separate? Because I'm surprised I beat Member Miller to this, but there's going to be a cost associated to this. So I'm just wondering what that looks like as well.
Our staff already maintains all of the internal trails, so there would be no additional cost with that. We would maintain those internal trails just as we typically do. Tom and I talked about it, and I think what our recommendation would be is to remove turnstiles and sections of the trail to open it up and slowly work our way at removing fence sections. Where we have opportunities to utilize inexpensive labor to do that. To get to your point about buckthorn removal, that is a significant investment. We don't have a plan to do a significant, well actually we do have a plan to do a significant buckthorn removal project. We're doing it with a grant, and with the Edina Garden Council, we're doing a buckthorn removal project. But to think about removing all the buckthorn in the park just isn't practical. But if there are areas that we can improve sight lines into the area, those are some things that we can certainly work on internally as a staff. But to tackle buckthorn in that entire park isn't realistic.
Yeah,
and that's something we can do on a gradual basis rather than all at once, over a couple
and
years.
I wasn't thinking that. I go back to previous comments that it's creepy. And so, to me, is if you try to open it up and get a little bit of vision in there, maybe you then do induce people to want to use that stuff. I mean, not that I haven't done this in a while, but I grew up in that neighborhood, and when I was a kid, that nature was where we built our bike jumps. And so when those turnstiles went up, I think I was about 2nd or 3rd grade, we were like heartbroken, because that to us was just them saying, you can't go in there because we don't want you doing what you're doing. And then it became... There was all these stories that, It was around the time Friday the 13th came out, so then there was like, oh yeah, there's spooky people in there. Anyway, so long story short, so I get where the creepy comes from, so that's why I'm saying when I walk that trail and I see dead trees and stuff, it just kind of, to me, exudes the whole idea of, it's the creepy old people living in a house that aren't taking care of their property. And so I'm just saying, if we're going to do that, is there some way that we can combine all this effort and selectively kind of do that and then induce the popular, the residents to want to try to use that?
Maybe we could market it for horror films.
I think the creepy part comes from the turnstiles and the obstruction. I walked it Monday night, and the interior, one of the pictures was a view across the wetland, and a lot of areas were really open and beautiful. But the turnstile areas is where all that buckthorn is. It's just not making it. That's the picture. So that's an interior picture from the trail inside.
Are there any other nature trails that are in Edina that are not dog allowed? I mean, well, there's one by Todd Park. There's a nature trail, but there's no fence, and their dogs are allowed. Yeah, and that's a nature, and they die. So I'm just curious, like.
All right.
I mean, there are several that we can, like to your point before, I think we can remove the fence. It can still be a nature trail and just treat it like other nature trails that do exist. Like, still pick up your dog poop and, keep them on a leash, but it's a nature trail. And will people take the dog off the leash? Yes, but they do that everywhere, anywhere else. So I'm not saying it's going to stop it by putting a fence up. But I think that I would agree with you in terms of, that would be my suggestion.
To your point, the fence encourages off-leash behavior, so.
But only by people with small dogs. You can lift them and bring them through the turnstile.
I guess I would be on the thing that it's totally not creepy in there because it's really great running because it's soft and pretty if you get through the turnstile. So I think there are actually trail runners that like that area. So I'd be curious, are you keeping the grass? Because it's really nice to run on in there.
Yeah, we wouldn't
So
be
you were not
changing any
looking at
surfaces.
cementing all of it? Okay. So you just have to get over your first creep. It's beautiful, he's right.
Other comments, inputs? Yeah, I mean, I think it's when I first heard you talk about this, Ann, and I went there a week ago. I think I was the only one in the nature trail area. Had to park my bike and lock it in one of those buckthorn infested fences. But I think it's a great idea to think about removing the fences, the turnstiles, because I've been residents here for over 20 years on and off, and I've never walked in there. I looked at it and wondered what's in there, never gone in. So I think the idea of is a good one of saying remove the turnstiles, phase out the fence removals, the buckthorn removals, and open it up. And I like that better than I think someone else may have suggested to you, is turn it into a dog park, leave the fencing, and I don't like that idea very much. But I like opening it up and seeing if we get more use of it, and seeing how that might work out. I think that's an excellent idea.
Greg, I think the first part of what you just said is the motion.
If others would agree, I would posit a motion that says we remove the turnstiles and phase in removals of the fences and the buckthorns as you're able to do it with available labor. Any other moves you need to make with appropriate fencing to make sure, or signage to make sure that people understand what its use is and still act appropriately.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Just a quick question of clarification. So in doing this, does that resolve temporarily the problem with going back to trying to build another high trail?
We will not be building another high trail. It
Okay.
would be cost prohibitive for us to build a boardwalk.
Okay, so this is
And
that sort of quasi-solution
I
to
think
saying,
it
yeah.
gives people an alternative.
Yep, okay.
I have one question. Though. Do we want to maybe consider this being pedestrian only so that you're not having the same issue? We're using this to have people get off the shared trail to feel safer. Should we make it pedestrian only and put up signs to that effect?
I think that would be my preference. Sorry, Matt, to not allow bikes back there.
78 Stingray, so that was not what my intent was.
Banana seed.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think that's a good addition. Let's see how that works. Any other comments or inputs on it? Okay, we have a motion to remove the turnstiles immediately, or when appropriate, and then phase in removal of the fence and the buckthorn, and to signage so that it is walking pedestrian only. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Okay, that
That
passes.
is excellent direction. Thank you very much.
The only other thing I'd add, Ann, and I think I mentioned this to you in an email, is thinking about, are there places we could add some bike racks in that area? Right, as more people are coming across 62 on bikes, that might be an area that, like I did, to park a bike and want to walk through that area as opposed to go all the way back to the front where we have one bike rack, and might also make it easier for people to say, I can go ahead and park my bike and I'll walk through here rather than ride my bike through.
Absolutely, that's a great suggestion, and we'll definitely take a look at a couple locations.
And the signs inside the nature trail, maybe we've got some signage money still left over that we could do some work there, because to whomever mentioned it over here, I did get lost walking through there. I had to stop at one fork in the road and go, well, which way am I supposed to go?
Yeah, those signs are very old. Yeah.
Fortunately, it wasn't 9 o'clock at night and getting really creepy. So.
We can work on that too. Thank you.
Matt, did you have something else?
I was just going to say, if we're getting rid of those turnstiles, can we look at getting rid of the same one that's up at the aquatic center as well?
Different discussion. All right. Anything else, Ann, on this topic?
No,
That's
thank you.
everything? Good. Thank you. Okay, next up on our agenda, comprehensive plan update. I hesitate to call it our 7th iteration, but it is. But it's only a smaller one. We've gotten much of our discussion down, and you have a piece of paper in front of you that's highlighted the one suggested change based on discussions that we've had in our last 2 meetings. We had one issue that was inside the finance and management piece that I proposed a change to that here just recently. Got some inputs from Matt and Mike and Eileen, who had all given some good insight over the last couple meetings. And so this was just, I'll just read here the draft that I was suggesting to amend this area around, did we appear to be providing or asking for park oversight on enterprise plans? And so this is again in section E.G, and it reads, it is in the interest of City Council, City staff, and the residents of Edina that all enterprise facilities shall have a long-term, meaning 5+ years, long-term business plan to inform the community and to guide staff in establishing direction and resources necessary to manage the health of these assets for Edina. It is recommended that these plans should be renewed every 3 years. The structure, content, and oversight of these plans will be at the sole discretion of City Council in coordination with the Edina City Manager. So I'll pause, and any comments from those of you that have seen it before, or as others hear it and have read it tonight, thoughts around how that works to address this issue that we've kicked around the last couple meetings. Positive, negative, sleeping.
Per my comments before, I was just, I guess, clarifying the cadence and what actually happens at that cadence. Because as you say, there's a long-term business plan, and then it's reviewed every 3 years. And I didn't know if that meant reviewed or renewed or redone. And was the business plan, is the business plan being reviewed and redone every year, or every 3 years, or every 5 years? So it's just clarifying the language around that. But that's the only comments I had.
And just to answer that directly, I think I took your input, Mike, and it's not changed on this copy, but had changed reviewed every 3 years with renewed every 3 years. The idea is, and as well in this, is not to get so granular that we're trying to instruct what needs to happen, but in a higher level structure, say, these enterprise assets, we put a lot of money into it. We think there's some benefit to having a longer-term plan that is evident, that will both, as I say, inform the community and guide city staff, and on a 3-year basis have some kind of review with that. It doesn't mean to say you have to have a consultant come in and do a 70-page document, but you don't want to just put it on a shelf someplace and never look at it again.
Right. Yep.
So Greg, have you talked to the city council about this? Do they want to do these 5-year plans?
Well, the city council ultimately will need to decide if they approve on this in the document, right? What we're doing as a commission is recommending to the city council what we think should be in the comprehensive plan. It's up to the city council then to look at that, and they could strike any one of these out and say, no, we don't think we'll do that. So they do ultimately get the last thing.
Had talked to somebody on it to get
Haven't
their
had
kind of view on
specific
it.
discussions on a point-by-point basis.
Okay.
No. Yep.
And as I communicated earlier, I think this brings us closer to adhering to the directions of the city council, to really all commissions, not just ours. So I really like the new language.
Okay, good. Well, I'll go ahead and make that change in the document. Where we are, as I understand it, in the overall comprehensive plan calendar is we're in phase 4, which is review and adoption. To your point, Brenda, it is now all of these chapters are coming and being pulled together. I think the consultants will get back involved now and try to make this weave it into one nice big document. But then ultimately it will go to the city council for their final review and discussion and decision about what they want, what they don't want, what they want to approve. And then it becomes a document that guides their work as well as ours, again, as an advisory board. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Appreciate all your input on it. Next, Parks and Recreation Commission bylaws. This was included in our packet. I think the intent here was most of us, and hopefully all of us, had a copy of this delivered to us, was provided as part of the boards and commission orientation. I felt it was just good practice to kind of read and review it as a full commission. So no set agenda here other than just to say that if you've had a chance to read it, any comments, any questions, any insights on the bylaws themselves as you think about how it guides us as a commission. Hearing none, I'll assume everything looked good. The only thing I will call out is 2 points that I remember from orientation. One is section 8 on proper communication outside of our public meetings. And I think especially as we break off into work committees and groups, make sure that you have read that and understand that, and that we ensure that we don't violate that communication rule by all of a sudden getting 5 or 6 of us together in an email dialogue and now we have a quorum, right? So make sure that we understand the meaning of that. And the other was in section 10. I don't think that this relates to us too often, but I think it's just always good to be aware of the conflict of interest clause. And we will at times have things that come in front of us, and just make sure that we're mindful of that and don't put any of ourselves in a situation where we could be accused of having a conflict of interest with issues and items that come in front of the park. Okay? All right, next up, work plan updates.
Just one question on this is,
Yes.
A lot of times in the corporate world, you usually have, when there are a set of HR rules or anything, everybody that is subject to it usually has to sign off that they've read it. Is there any, I don't recall doing that coming on here, and I don't know if there's any requirement or any thought on that for here.
I am not sure, honestly, if it's something that folks sign off on. I don't recall there being anything like that. It is information that's included in all of the orientation materials and in the orientation presentation that our city manager does. But in terms of signing off, I don't recall that. That's a good question.
Okay. Section E, work plan updates. We've had 5 initiatives ongoing for our 2018 work plans. So just if there is any brief update on each of these initiatives as we go through. Initiative number 1, Arden Park Natural Resource Plan. I know we've had a lot of input on that recently. Anything over the last month to add to Arden Park?
Greg?
Yes.
Tomorrow we start again. We got approval to proceed on the 90%. So tomorrow's our first neighborhood meeting again. So we're starting that again. So.
Good. Thanks, Rick. Next one was Weber Woods. Have we officially stopped this one, Ann? I know that was our suggestion as part of our amendment to add our alternative funding.
Yes, that is correct. We will not be working on this in 2018.
All right, so that one's officially dropped. Number 3, complete a study report, field courts, rinks capacity. I know I can at least speak to start that for our team. We had a lot of data gathering and some early discussions back in May. I think you have some good insights both from the city perspective and Val from a school perspective. We did not have a chance to get back together in June, so need to pick that up here in July and see where we take that data that we've got from both sides. Anyone on the team have anything else to add to that?
The only thing I would say is that this kind of goes back to some of the stuff we've talked about. I think that there is, whatever comes out of this, I think it'd be really important that we communicate to both sides, to both the public and to the schools and through Val and stuff like that. I had a conversation not too long ago with one of the coaches up at the high school, and their impression was that there isn't anything either written or handshake or air quotes or whatever it is between the parks, and it just it kind of happens. And so I hope that what comes out of this is something that's very easy and has to be somewhat formal but not totally letter of the law stuff, but there is something that is documented so that we understand that we did this work and this is the common in 2018, this is what the expectation or the understanding was, and if there's some discrepancies that we heard or thought about, we address them, because this is why we gathered the data and stuff like that. I think that would be really good, and then take that information and get it to the residents in some fashion, and I think, and to the specifically to the youth sports committees and boards and stuff like that. And I think also it would be really good to get the Troy Stein into the athletic department so that they have that information at the ready. So that would be the only thing I would add.
Okay, good. Thanks, Matt.
Can I add one thing, Greg, just so you're aware? Tiffany Bushland, our recreation supervisor that's working on this project, will be going out on maternity leave in August.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that reminder. Number 4, we've covered already, which was the comprehensive plan update. So that one we keep moving along on. And then number 5, Mike, I don't know if you have any update for us on discussions with the John Philip Sousa Band.
Well, I would like to make a comment and ask a question, see if we can get some clarity. So basically, Brendan or Brandon, I can never remember.
Brendan.
So we met with the leader of Sousa side, and then I was setting up a meeting with the city side and got pushback and they said, we're pulling information together for the Arts and Culture Commission so that they can discuss this in their group. We'll get back to you and let you know what happens after that. So nothing's ever happened after that that's been communicated to me. So that brings up 2 questions. Is this a Parks and Recs work project, or is it an Arts and Culture Commission work project? Because apparently everything was being done for them, and we got pushback on our side. And then, has anything happened that you know of? Because I have heard nothing.
There isn't anything else that's happened that I'm aware of. I am familiar with what you're saying. I'm not sure if it was a change in the original intent that happened at some stage of the game, but I will look into this and I'll get back to you for sure. What I think might be the situation is that City administration is now requesting that the Arts and Culture Commission make a recommendation, and that the Parks and Rec Commission review and comment on that recommendation. But I will find that out for you.
Okay.
Okay. Fair enough. Thanks, Ann. And then now number 6, which becomes number 5. You may recall a couple months ago we forwarded a recommendation to the City Council to reinstate a suggestion we had in our work plan, and at their June 5th City Council meeting they accepted that. So we may now add back in an alternative funding sources work initiative. So we've got that header. We had some discussion about it the end of last year. And so at this point, we need a couple volunteers from the commission that feel a passion around that. And I know Mike's already got his hand up as one, and he was pushing it before. Anyone that would be willing to jump in and join Mike and help on that? Rick? Great. Anyone else? What we had suggested before, Pat, was we've got a lot of projects going, a lot of master plans, and we end up waiting on city funding. So what can we do to think about alternative ways to bring funding into the city specifically for Parks and Rec growth support organization? Okay. All right. We got Pat and Eileen. So it's a good start with the 4. Mike, would you be willing to start out as a chair for that? And if you decide to elect somebody else, but I know you had a passion about it, so I'd appreciate it.
I'll be happy to do it.
Good. So we've added that one. And any updates for us, Mike?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I've already been talking to some people about it. So, in fact, I'll probably be setting up a phone call in the next couple of weeks with some outside people that do this for a living.
Good.
And have expertise in the area, so they can give us some direction and also possibly run with it and do a lot of the work, because we're not going to have any of the expertise internally to do some of this. But they've been doing it with a lot of other parks around the nation, so it's something that's happening everywhere, so we can piggyback off of it.
Great.
So there you go.
Good. Thank you. Impromptu response on the spot. Okay.
Sorry, my only comment to that is, how do we coordinate or combine the fact that to some extent this is happening already, such as the dasher boards in Braemar, the scoreboard and around at Braemar Fields. To some extent this is happening, and I'm not going to get into semantics or try to get down into granularity, but like I said, so how do we combine that to potentially someone sponsoring and donating the money to, take one of the 12 or 15 playgrounds that are going to be into the CIP and probably not get the funding again and need to have a new playground. How do we combine all of that into one, like, this is how we're managing funding to keep our parks Greg is spearheaded in terms of the comprehensive plan and what we've said we're doing in there. So I think that is, to me, is one of the things I'd like to see you guys try to get a handle around.
It's a good point. And initially, the thought in my head initially is that they're not mutually exclusive. It's not you do one or the other. It's the things that are happening now can continue. Maybe they get turbocharged. Sure. Maybe they're doing great on their own. We don't know yet. I know that a lot of people have been doing a lot of work in that area for a lot of years. So, but that could just become part of the plan, of the more comprehensive plan.
And totally agree with that. I guess to me, maybe it's a conversation you and I had off, not in here, but was followed the bylaws, which was, we don't do that, right? We're not going to do that. And I guess we both questioned the idea of, well, you're kind of doing it now, right? So totally agree. Not mutually exclusive. How do we do it? What is it? look like for Braemar Arena? What does it look like for the Aquatic Center, all the enterprise, different parks, but then also every individual park as well? And so,
Well, part of the plan is identifying what the assets are. And so that, you know, step one is what are the assets? What are they doing now? What can be enhanced?
Correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't that be one of the purposes of your meeting with this outside group, is to get direction on how to bring that all together and do that? I mean, they would have
Right.
expertise in that area. Other parks or commissions have done this, or cities.
Right.
So they would seem to have information maybe on how to get that done.
Yeah.
But good input to add to the work plan. Thanks, Matt. Okay, next section. Chair and member comments. Any comments from any of the commission members for this month?
I had one. I had actually reached out to Susan with some feedback in terms of the new signs we put in. I've seen several of them, and around the base of them, I don't know if you're on the email or not, but the I don't want to call it plastic, but the plastic that's frame that's around the wood, it's warping on a lot of them, and I didn't know if that was within our. I would assume there's a warranty on that, so I didn't know if there's any feedback in terms of making sure that we are in. I mean, I've seen them on probably 12 parks that I've seen this happening, so I just want to make sure that if we are able to get within warranty, that we can get those fixed.
Susan mentioned to me that, but I'm sorry, I don't have an update. She's working on it, I know. And Susan's on vacation this week.
Question, and maybe I should have asked Joe, but I was all excited this year, year 3, the wildflower garden across at Braemar. Nothing's really happening. Are my expectations out of whack with what should be happening there?
You should have asked Joe. We do have a maintenance contract with the company through our engineering department, so I know that they're working on it and monitoring it and maintaining it appropriately. But yeah, I'm not sure. Leap is supposed to be year 3.
Right.
I would agree. It probably
Leap
doesn't
year.
look like it's leaping, but we'll keep working on it.
the weeds are creeping.
I think last year, didn't they cut everything down? So maybe that's part of the intention as well, is to give it another year.
And that was Member Miller's question last year. Why are they cutting it?
So that it would bloom this year.
It's all a plan.
But actually, last year there was some blooms. But
Dandelions aren't blooms.
anyway.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Anything else down here? Julie, welcome back. Glad to have you. Eileen?
Congratulations.
Okay. Brenda? Pat? Rick? Val? Matt? I just had a couple things since our last meeting. Rick and I both got to attend the 9 Mile Creek Regional Bike Trail opening that was at Fred Richards on Sunday, June 3rd. And a little chilly outside, but it was a good event. I thought well attended and a nice way to formally kick off the start of the bike trail. So that was fun to do. Also, I did want to share with the commission that on June 20th, I attended a public forum hosted by the Sierra Club of Minnesota and Minnesota Land Trust Forum. Lou Miranda from Edina Planning Commission had asked if I would join him in attending that. It was entitled A Conversation About the Intersection of Land Use, Transportation, and Conservation. And it was at Edina's own Wooden Hill Brewery. So that was a wonderful location to just go have a beer and chat a bit about the topic. Just share with the commission that the topics that seemed to be the hot buttons for folks that were there were around connectivity and density as far as key themes. So at least from the area of connectivity, people brought it up around the Southdale district, people brought it up around the bike trails that are coming out. How do we get to things, whether it's a park or whether it's getting our kids to their basketball or soccer or whatever. So certainly something that I think we could think about as we initiate a comprehensive plan and execute on some of our strategies. And I don't know if you, third item, I don't know if you were going to mention this as well, but she'd shared with me that we have the Edina Open Streets event coming up. And so if we have any interest as a commission on having a table at that event, where 2 or 3 of us might spend some of that afternoon. It's Sunday, September 23rd from 1 to 5 p.m. And we have to register by the 17th of August. So it's part of, I know, and Julie, you were kind of leading some of this as well when we were talking about marketing and communication before. What are ways that we can make sure that we're getting ourselves out in the community a little bit more, whether it's just as a listening post or if it's actually presenting some information. So think about that a little bit, and whether it's tonight or later on, if that's something you might have an interest in doing, let me know, let Ann know, and we can go ahead and reserve ourselves a table at that event. Our August meeting, Monday the 20th, are you going to cover that in your comments? Or okay. We wanted to have another off-site event. Our meeting in August is not on the traditional second Tuesday. It is Monday the 20th. And as I mentioned to Joe as he was leaving, Ann and I had kicked around having that off-site at Braemar, at the golf course, to get a first-hand view of what's happening. Potentially the non-golfing area that will be up and running, and we can do a little activity there. But some of the broad items for that offsite would be begin our work planning for 2019, maybe review some priority items from our 2015 strategic plan. I'd also like you to do some thinking about our effectiveness as a commission, and we can spend some time discussing our effectiveness and how we could make some improvements. So thinking of it, since it's an offsite, being a bit of a dinner and social time as well, from 5:30 to 7, and then at 7 we'll start our meeting in the clubhouse. So make sure that you have that date, August 20th, Monday, August 20th on your calendar, and you'll be hearing more about our offsite. And then the last thing that I noticed today as well, just trying to stay connected with the other activities that are happening in the city. This Thursday, July 12th, the Greater Southdale Working Group will have an open house to present progress and receive feedback on what's happening in the Southdale district. And that's at the Public Works facility. So if that might be something that you would have an interest in hearing what might be the plans for Southdale, they'll have an open house here this week. That's all I have. Ann?
Great updates, Greg. Thank you very much. I am excited about having you all out to Braemar Golf Course on August 20th for a meeting. Red River Kitchen will be open, so we'll be able to have dinner with Red River. And I would love an opportunity to take you around a few holes of the golf course to check out the new construction. And as Greg mentioned, maybe play a little bit on the lawn games area. So I think that'll be a good night for us. As you can imagine, summer is an incredibly busy time. Not that we ever have a slow time in our department. We have a ton going on. I'm just going to talk about a few of the really big projects and the highlights of the projects that we're working on right now. The City Council is currently considering formalizing an agreement with the developer Franchu for the old Public Works site. And with that, I have been asked to provide some high-level information and study on a new community facility for Grandview. So I am working on a pretty quick and short timeline to provide some preliminary information to help the City Council make a decision on a partnership agreement with Franchu for their July 26th HRA work session. So I am currently working with our staff team. I have brought, if you all remember, Victor Pashadi from HGA, who worked with us on the Grandview study back a couple of years ago, in as an architectural consultant on this project. We are looking at square footage requirements to combine art center, senior center, or active adult use, and a possible restaurant at a new facility at Grandview. So we're looking at a possible program, we're looking at square footage requirements, and we're looking at a very high level pro forma for the operation, and including actually capital construction costs. So that's a project that I'm working on currently, and we'll be making a presentation to the City Council, or to the HRA, on the 26th of July. So,
can you help us understand how different that is than the project we did for Grandview? Very similar to those exact specs just a year ago?
Yep, great question. It is a very similar project, But the direction that I've received so far is to just look at art, active adult, and restaurant. That could change, but that is the direction that I'm receiving currently from the council to study for that facility. So it is kind of a reincarnation of the study that we did back in 2016. Yep, there would be parking, and that's part of it too, is to determine how much parking would be needed on the site and how much that would cost.
Just for the record, are they making sure we've looked at this from a traffic perspective? Because that was the other part, is not just the parking, but the traffic flow that's already quite a nightmare on that area. I'm trying not to show passion, but passion is in my fist.
We are not doing a traffic study this month, but I know traffic studies have been completed on that site and in that district.
I think there are many people probably in the same passion that I am, that if we could share out that study and make people feel like they can sleep better, it would be a good suggestion to the council, because I think there's a lot of really frustrated people out there around this particular area, especially people who live right there that see it every day.
Sure. Arden Park. Rick already mentioned a meeting that we have tomorrow. The City Council did provide direction to staff and the Watershed District to continue to move to the 90% phase of design development for Arden Park. So our staff teams are working on that currently. We do have a meeting tomorrow to discuss the Arden Park shelter building. Our next open house for the project to show the results of the 90% study will be on August 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m. We were originally thinking that meeting was going to be on August 22nd, but that meeting will be on Thursday, August 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m. We're going to try to host that meeting in the park. If for some reason weather does not allow that, we'll move it into the lobby at City Hall. Landscape Structures has been selected as our playground vendor for Arden Park. We're in the public input phase of the design of the structure, so that is very exciting. And shifting gears to the Aquatic Center, it's the 60th anniversary week right now, so we have different activities going on at the Aquatic Center every single day. So check out the website. There is pool yoga, inner tube races, flow rider trick contests, rubber ducky grab, log rolling demonstration, and kids dance DJ on Friday. So lots of different events going on. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't very good in June for the Aquatic Center, so we're hoping that July and August will provide us warmer and sunnier weather like we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks. And lastly, at the arena, if you recall, the last 3 years we have hosted the Beauty League. That starts this Wednesday. It is NHL players that play 3 games of 4 versus 4 hockey each evening, Wednesday night from 5:30 to 9. Tickets are $10 and children under 10 are free. It's always been a very popular event at the arena. And that's all I have.
Good, thank you, Ann. Any last word from anybody? We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.